Hey everyone, Gravity here. Before the video begins, I simply ask that if you enjoy my content to hit that subscribe button below. Nowhere else on YouTube are you going to find a Battlefield player who's played with teams competitively since Battlefield 1942, nearly 18 years ago. Don't forget to subscribe, and please enjoy the video. Over the nearly 20-year history of the Battlefield franchise, there have been many great maps worthy of praise. Some maps become legendary, icons themselves of the Battlefield series and worth remembering for their balance, uniqueness, and special gameplay. This is the story of the best maps in Battlefield. You knew it, I knew it, and here we are. If you don't know what this loading screen is, you don't know Battlefield too well. One of the most iconic maps of the entire Battlefield series, and arguably one of the best, was destined to make it on this series. Welcome to Strike at Karkand, Battlefield 2. To call Strike at Karkand legendary is an understatement. Not only is it simply one of the most popular maps in Battlefield history, it is also one to have incredible gameplay and balance. Released as a base game map for Battlefield 2, Karkand became the go-to map for urban combat. This is despite the fact that other urban maps like Sharkey Peninsula and Mosture City, great maps in their own right, were released alongside it. It was a day one hit, and we have never looked back. Let's examine what makes this map so extraordinary. Strike at Karkand is an urban Battlefield map of the Conquest Assault game mode, in each of the 3 different map sizes. The US team is the attacking side and must press into the city from the southernmost road. The city is dense and tightly wound, with significant changes in elevation from the left side of the map to the right. Some open squares and streets make combat different depending on location, and the map contains only a few buildings in which you can climb up to the rooftops. The lighting on the map is markedly different from nearly any other map in the series. Dimly lit, it is almost as if a dust storm or sandstorm is covering the city. Visibility is quite frankly perfect. You can see everything in front of you, but the overcast masks the draw distance and the fog of war to prevent you from being hit from great distances, nor catch a glimpse of the engine's limitations. The US attackers press downhill from one of 2 nearby uncapturable spawns on each side of the main road. The right side allows for a straight down sprint across the road into the winding streets toward the hotel flag. Players could also go further right up the hill, and then jump down into the back street on the edge of the map. This street frequently found itself cluttered with infantry, away from armor and a clear shot toward the rest of the map. Infantry had small alcoves and alleys to use as cover, and jeeps and even LAVs could fit through this street and attempt a run-by. Speaking of run-bys, the players and even a few vehicles could jump off the hill onto the right of the street and move along the low ground just on the map's border. The left side US spawn is a high-risk, high-reward position that allows attackers to press the left side of the city, and to potentially make a beeline toward the suburb flag along the hill to the left. Snipers tended to love this hill on both sides, as it was easy pickings for players coming out of the spawn. Each map size has slight differences to flag layout, but overall, the map experience remains the same. On the 16-player variant, Karkand only has 3 capturable flags: the hotel, the square, and the market. On this map size, the position of the flagpole lies at the center of the square flag, rather than within the small enclosed corner of the apartment building on the other sizes. The 32 size variant has 6 capturable flags: the hotel, the square, the market, the suburbs, the train accident, and the gatehouse. The 64 size version adds 3 additional flags, but removes the market flag. The new flags added lie across the river, along with the gatehouse. These are the cement factory, the warehouse, and the factory. Curiously, over the years, the favored variant of the map has changed. During Battlefield 2's prime, the 32 version was almost exclusively used on Karkand-only servers, while in recent years, the 64-man variant has been favored. Vehicle counts were also varied on the different map sizes. On the 16 and 32 sizes, the mech side started the round with only one tank, whereas the US team always started with a tank and LAV originating from the uncapturable gas station. On the 64 map size, the vehicle numbers are increased to 1 tank and 2 APCs per team, with the mech resources spawning far back at the factory flag. One thing to note though, is that the position of the mech vehicle spawns, both at the gatehouse for 32 size and the factory for 64, gave a small window for the US team to break through before the mech armor came to aid in the defense. Another important point about the armor on Karkand: despite vehicles being able to quickly annihilate infantry and frequently camp easy spawn points, this was not your tanker's propaganda round. This was still Battlefield 2, and anti-tank rockets frickin' hurt. Tanks and APCs could go down instantly to 2, 3, 4 rockets depending on where it hits, or if it was a clean tow, even get 1 shot. This is not to say that great tankers didn't exist and didn't know how to play the map and farm well, but on Battlefield 2's Karkand, even infantry stood a great chance to fight back. The flag layout of Karkand is one of its greatest strengths. All points are mere seconds of each other. Even the farther out suburbs flag in crossing the river only takes a few seconds more. Because of this, infantry battles are constant, flags are always in flux, and you always are on the move. It combines the best features of what an urban map should be. The first point on the attacker route is the hotel, a flag with a small capture radius located on the high platform nestled inside the base of the structure. Frequently pounded by grenades from below, this flag can be a difficult initial capture. Ladders on each side of the platform can be camped, and there is only one stairway up. On the left side of the flag is a building you can climb up and use it to jump onto the flag radius. Spawn points around the flag are rough, to say the least. They are out in the open and easily campable, but they are within view of the flag, making instant grenade defenses possible. Next comes the square flag, defined by the large apartment building which almost always hosts a group of snipers on top. On the 16-player size, the flag sits in the center of the square, wide open for capture plays, while in the other version the flag sits in the easily defended yard of the building, somewhat protected from grenades and attacking players. Far to the west of the map, up the road, or up the flight of stairs if you choose, players can find the suburb flag next to a rounded house. The flag itself sits right in front of the building, practically right in the open with extremely limited cover. It can be a difficult capture if enemies are nearby, even for vehicles. A small courtyard across the street provides some cover from enemies advancing from the market or a place to hide for a short time. Just north of the square, an immediate drop in terrain will bring you to the market flag, and just further around the corner, the train wreck flag. Flags on Karkand almost always have a small capture radius. However, it is the terrain around the flags which make them unique and enjoyable. It is very easy to have a bad flag on a map, with terrible buildings and terrain around it. But Karkand seems to evade this problem out of sheer luck, at least on the west side of the river. The map features 2 locations to make the crossing, the shallows to the south and the bridge to the north. Should the map be cut in half by the teams, a grind will begin as each team tries to push. A favorite of many players and hated by others, this grind is usually littered by snipers and support players throwing grenades, cutting down any player attempting to cross the bridge or make the swim. Anti-tank players also keep the armor at a distance, as the strength of the rockets make it difficult and suicide to push. Across the bridge, the gatehouse flag, perched on high ground in a defensible position from both the warehouse and the bridge, make it a tough capture for attackers. The eastern side of Karkand, while experienced almost exclusively on the 64-player version, gives the map an almost different feel. While the Gatehouse flag just to the east of the river can be found in the 32-player map size, the addition of the factory, the warehouse, and the cement factory almost make the map too big. These flags have far more open space within and around the flag capture radii, and more dead zones between the flags. The warehouse flag inside of a structure familiar to many Battlefield games is easily defensible, whereas the cement factory flag is usually an easy capture, thanks in large part due to its ease of killing new player spawns, and a lack of interest due to the terrain layout. Players are historically much more interested in fighting over the other East Bank flags, and the cement factory, in hindsight, probably could have been removed. Finally, the factory flag on the easternmost part of Karkand is bland and unremarkable. Office buildings to the north provide some cover for movement, while the wall to the east of the warehouse on the low ground can protect attackers throwing grenades, and create a choke point for new mech armor. Speaking of armor, the loss of the factory flag to the US side was a devastating blow to the mech team, with the US side able to access additional vehicles and allow the mech team none. Overall, the industrial side of Karkand was a bit bloated, and generally became an acceptable area to engage in only on non-vehicle servers. The addition of these three flags added a lot of extra terrain and slowed down the action by quite a bit by spreading players out across the map, even without the market flag. Yet, even with this lackluster section of the map, players have still generally loved playing there. Despite the dusty fog, the terrain and buildings have a clean look, and seeing enemies against the backdrop goes a long way in player satisfaction. Strike at Karkand found itself remade a few times. In Battlefield Play for Free, in Battlefield Online, in Battlefield 2142, where it found itself very out of place and unpopular, and most recently in Battlefield 3. Battlefield 3's version of Karkand deserves a moment of discussion, because it is a map that was so dutifully remade and upgraded, yet severely lacked the charm and magic of the original. The upgrade from Refractor Engine to Frostbite could have been amazing, but too many things just felt so off. First, like many Battlefield 3 maps, Karkand possessed an intense form of torture known as the sun. The lighting on BF3 Karkand is terrible, with the brightness being far too high and the sungland being overpowering. A critical point that made Battlefield 2's version beloved was its dim, dusty atmosphere, and the updated version took this for granted. Next, the destroyed and ruinous terrain of this version contrasted with the clean Battlefield 2 look, making it more difficult to see enemies, and allowed players to get stuck on debris frequently. Lastly, Battlefield 2's Karkand had minimal instances of buildings with which a player could enter, instead keeping players to the streets. BF3's Karkand practically made every single building on the map one which not only you could enter, but often had a second or third floor. This allows for far too much building camping, often providing a covered high ground position making gunfights too unfair. Perhaps another fact which made the original so beloved for infantry players. Despite these shortcomings, the map layout once again proved how solid it is even with all the visual detriments. Battlefield 3's Karkand isn't intrinsically bad, it just isn't great and doesn't live up to the original. Now, Battlefield 2's Karkand did have its drawbacks. Obscene grenade spam, claymore madness, spawn camping, and occasional tank farming. Yet these can be attributed to the game's core mechanics, as the map was balanced as all hell. A lack of any aircraft demonstrated the near-perfect balance between armor and infantry of Battlefield 2. The multitude of pathing options through the streets, buildings, and alleys allowed for safe movement and flank opportunities, run-bys, and plenty of cover, which is exactly what you want on an urban Battlefield map. Even without the server-side tools removing vehicles or explosives, Karkand never failed to be the map where infantry players came to practice and dominate. If you wanted to get good as infantry, Karkand is where you were, a fact which remains to this day. Battlefield 2's strike at Karkand has a mythology all its own. Its status is legendary simply for being one of the best, most balanced, and enjoyable maps Battlefield has ever created. It has stood the test of time and become symbolic of just how great the series can be. Hopefully, one day it will make an appearance again, faithfully I might add, but until that day, we Battlefield players can proudly look back upon the map in which we feverishly poured hundreds of hours playing, fooling around, and cherishing this great Battlefield experience.